Hello and welcome to Majlis and Markets, a podcast where we explore the trends shaping Islamic and global markets. I am your host, Hassan Jivraj. If you enjoy this episode, be sure to like, share and subscribe. And don't forget to leave us a rating. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Majlis and Markets, or drop me a line at hassan@majlisandmarkets.com. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Majlis and Markets. I am your host Hassan Jivraj. I'm really happy to say this is our first ever video podcast. You may have heard me on the audio version of this podcast, but now we're going to be doing video podcasts going forward, and I'm really excited about that. And I'm really excited to bring you new guests and to bring you fresh insights into Islamic and global markets. And now as we begin our video journey, let me introduce our first guest on video. It's Parimita Day. Parimita, nice to meet you.
Hey Hassan, it's such a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. You know, I've followed your journey in journalism, and it's been really fascinating to talk offline and talk about like the Middle East financial capital markets. And I know you covered the fund space, and I'm really interested to talk to you today about your experience with Moniify and also the more broader journalism landscape in the Middle East and more globally as well. But before we get into all of that, could you give our viewers, I'd say our listeners, but our listeners and viewers, your background story?
Definitely. So I come from a family of journalists, I would say. My dad was a financial journalist with Express Group in India, and his entire life he dedicated to financial journalism. You know, when I was a kid, and I used to accompany my father to some of these, to some of his workspaces where it used to be strewn with newspapers. I might come across a very old school person, but I am still a fan of newspapers. Kind of like I grew up amidst newspapers, and then I've seen that transition from print to online and now completely towards social media. So this still gets talked about. There's a very talked about topic in my life among my friends and family. So basically, my background is with information technology. I did my master's in IT, but you know that's like the typical university mentality where you are still finding yourself and you really don't know what suits you or you know where your passion lies. So but there was this one thing that I knew that I had to do, and like I was always keen on, is to talk to people. Something which makes me meet new people, talk to them, probably understand their stories, know their backgrounds. So something that's a people facing role. That is something that I always wanted to do. And that's how like my dad kind of saw this whole flair for journalism, and he suggested me, you know, like, since you can't find your feet in IT, why don't you give this field a try? Like, I have been a journalist for so many years now, and I can see that you might turn out to be a good one, probably. And then, of course, I did my degree. I did my postgraduate diploma in journalism from Mumbai in India, and then I did a very brief stint with one of the smaller business startups here, and that time I was writing about mutual funds. So it was a pretty exciting space. It was very upcoming, and this should be in the year 2011. I was there for a brief, I would say like 4 months, because it was kind of an internship role, which I got after completing my diploma. That was the time I was also being an arbitrator with one of the traders in the Bombay Stock Exchange. So I was also learning the tricks of the trade, how to arbitrage. And trust me, when I say it's difficult, it's really, really difficult. So that was something that actually opened my world to the world of finance. So I did my brief stint with Cafe Mutual in Mumbai. Then from there, I got my opportunity, I would say, through my then boyfriend, who's my partner now as well, my husband now as well. There was this English newspaper in Oman. It's still there. It's called Muscat Daily. And their CEO came down for interviews, and we both got selected. And we decided to move to Oman. to Muscat. That was the first time that I was leaving home and moving to a different country, very young, no experience at all. So that also gave me a lot of, I would say, that also gave me a platform to kind of explore something which was outside of my comfort zone. That was the time I was, and plus, it was Oman has traditionally been, I would say, very, very local dominated. Arabic, that was also the time when Arabic was, like, in most of the press conferences, in most of the events that I used to go, Arabic was the first language, and then there was English. So it was hard. It was difficult. Then since it was a newspaper, so we used to work in shifts. Mine was a morning shift, and sometimes, it started from 7 a.m. in the morning up until like 9 p.m. at night. And because that was the time I was covering everything business. So there was the stock exchange, there was aviation, retail, hospitality, tourism, everything, the business aspect of all the sectors possible. Then because Oman itself is a very small country, and after a point of time, it felt like there's nothing more that the country could offer me in terms of exposure. And plus, we have all heard of, how globally acquainted the UAE is, especially Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So I kind of made, like, I was trying to move to Dubai at that point with any of the journalism offers that I might come across. That was the time ITP Media Group, they were looking for people for Construction Week. So it was a completely different sector for me. Although I had done a bit during my stint at Muscat Daily, but then to write for Construction Week, I had to really get into the depth of construction and real estate, developer, subcontractors. That was one of, but then at that time, the editorial director was Robert Willock. He really placed a lot of trust in me. I moved to Dubai with ITP in 2014. When I got into that industry, there was a very thin similarity with the finance world and the construction and the real estate world. And the similarity is both the industries are dominated by males. So the construction and the real estate landscape was like, we could hardly, for me, like, I could hardly find any female presence at that time. So that also presented a kind of a challenge that made me want to excel in that space as well. So I was with ITP for almost a year and 10 months. From ITP, I moved to BNC Publishing. They were kind of like an offshoot of ITP because some of the ex-ITV colleagues, they started their own company and they got some people from ITP on board. I was one of them, and I was writing for their construction and logistics magazine. That was the time, like, print was still there, like it hadn't died. So once BNC came into life, I got a bigger role, an expanded exposure. So I started getting my hands on editing as well. So there used to be like junior reporters whose copies I used to edit, and sometimes freelancers or stringers used to send us copies, which we used to edit as well. And then, of course, you have your on-field work, which you were doing side by side. During my stint with the construction and the real estate landscape for almost like 3.5 years, I did come across quite a few interesting stories. Probably we will talk about it later. Then we can discuss the kind of stories as well. Then from BNC, that was, I guess, around 2000, probably 2018. But you know how it is, like, no, although both the roles were very nice and both the organizations were really good as well. But I always wanted to go back to the traditional finance journalism. That was something that I always felt was missing in my portfolio. And that's when an opportunity with the Saudi-based news website, Argam, came up. Their English bureau is based in Dubai, although their headquarters are in Riyadh in Saudi. So I joined Argam in 2018. I was covering everything Saudi, like the stock markets, both the stock markets, the parallel and the main and the parallel stock markets. Then, of course, I was covering the asset management space as well, the banking space as well. That was exactly something what I wanted to do, but it was all Saudi. So I was with Argam for almost 3.5 years. Like my entire the COVID period I spent with Argam. There were a couple of trips to Saudi, obviously, and I guess that was one of the experience which I really cherish, because the kind of work that I was doing that time was exactly similar to what I had always wanted to do in the financial landscape. Post Argam, which I quit in 2022, like early 22, I joined Citywire. Citywire, I'm guessing, Citywire, I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but it's a London headquartered company, specialized, and they're a very niche publication. They specialize in fund, asset management, wealth management, private banking. And that's when I kind of found my forte that, yes, this is exactly what I want to do. So I was there with them for 2 years, but trust me, Hassan, those 2 years were one of the best 2 years of my career, I would say. Like, I got to understand the entire DIFC, ADGM in, like, should I call them industry? Yeah, probably. So I got to understand that industry. Then I met so many knowledgeable people within that industry. Then it was, I met fund managers, I met investment guys, I met private bankers who have been doing a lot of good work. But then, sometimes they are not, I would say, they're not out there in the media. So people actually don't know what's going on. And so that was also the time, which was like post-COVID, that a lot of private wealth started coming in Dubai as well. Because of course, I would say that was the time, like 70% of because of the COVID restrictions, which were there worldwide. But then in Dubai, it was a bit different. So, and then of course, it was fueled by the Russia-Ukraine war as well. So that was the time when a lot of private wealth started pouring in, and there was so much to write about. People still, like, they want to talk to you, they want to tell their stories, and such a vibrant landscape it is. But unfortunately, there are a very few media outlets who write about that. So Citywire, I think I was there with them up until like early 2024. Then then the Moniify thing came up, which I joined them in May 2024. I was there with them, unfortunately, up until only February this year. So that has been a wild goose chase. Like, I mean, something which was completely unexpected and totally out of the blue. It's like sudden poof of lightning that hit you. So yeah, that's been my journey. So I don't know whether it's really interesting or not, but that is how my career so far has shaped in the Gulf so far.
That's really great. Yeah, no, just hearing your story about starting off in India and then going to Oman, like in the early 2010s, and then, transitioning to the UAE, writing about real estate and all these other sectors and construction. And I think you were probably there at the time when Dubai was a little bit of a decline before pre-2014.
Yes.
So, and I actually came across your work when you were at Argam, when you were writing a lot of these articles in Saudi Arabia, because I think you said you were there in 2018. So this is when, just a couple of years after Vision 2030 had been unveiled, and Saudi was obviously changing and still is changing today. And
Absolutely. And there was so much, and I think that was the time when there was, like, the whole women driver thing also, like, that also got abolished. And then there were talks about cinema theaters being constructed, and there were so many projects that were like being announced. So that was like, I think we kind of saw the transition from what Saudi was like in their early 2000s and what it is now. I mean, I'm not sure where were you that time? Like, what was you doing?
I was actually at Citywire at that time.
Oh, okay.
And similarly to you, I was writing, but I was doing fixed income, and covering Middle Eastern emerging market bonds. So, like when, say, for example, a company or a sovereign in the Middle East would issue bonds, you'd write about like, they sent out a request for proposal, otherwise known as RFP, to the banks, and then you'd be talking to bankers who are trying to pitch on these deals and trying to get on these deals, and then they'd announce the mandates of the banks. So you'd have like these international banks or local banks trying to get onto the deal. as
Yeah.
arrangers, and the higher up they are in the arranging status, the more fees they earn.
Mhm.
And this was obviously back in the days. Like now, it's very common for these countries and companies to issue bonds, but at that time, it wasn't as common. They relied a
It
lot on the
wasn't.
local banking sector, right? And the oil revenues, they were oil windfall. But yeah, your work at Argam, it was really fantastic, especially like looking for stuff in the English language on Saudi Arabia at that time.
That was like they really wanted to expand on on the English side, because the Arabic one had like coverage from all 6 countries, like all 6 GCC countries, but the English one was only having Saudi at that time. And my then editor, Reem, she was a real visionary. Like I absolutely loved working with her. She had her own ideas, and she gave us like that amount of freedom where we can suggest our own ideas, go out, like get stories done. And then, of course, there were stories or there were inputs that were obviously coming from the Arabic team as well. So that used to get translated because it was not possible for us to travel to Saudi all the time. Their Saudi team, like their Arabic team in Saudi is huge. So they all the time they used to send us stories translated. And that was the time, of course, I was doing the whole copy editing stuff as well. So we used to edit the translation copies along with, of course, getting your own story. So that was a setup that I kind of really enjoyed. Saudi was always like this, I would say, it was always behind the curtains. So nobody was like, there was hardly any news coming out of Saudi at that time. And it was very difficult as well, definitely for us expats, where there's a language barrier. So like we really received a lot of positive responses from our readers at that time. Whenever I used to say I work for Argam, they say, oh yeah, Argam, they do like really good Saudi stuff. And I always read Argam because there were these live updates on stock markets, which hardly anyone did. And I don't think anyone still does. So yeah, I mean, Argam was really a leader in the Saudi market.
And then at Citywire, that's probably where I read a lot of your work.
Yeah.
Again, it was really fantastic.
We came across as well, like we started talking on LinkedIn.
I know your work was fantastic, and writing about the DIFC and ADGM and some of the other financial centers. Like, what was that like talking to like investment bankers and portfolio managers? Was that interesting, you thought?
If I'm being very honest, it really started out to be very intimidating in the beginning because, of course, I was also learning quite a bit on the job. It was like really in-depth knowledge, and I literally had to read a lot to understand. There were certain terms, there were certain jargons, which I couldn't use if I didn't know the real meaning behind that. And I really owe my knowledge and understanding to some of my close contacts. Like I would say they would be my mentors in this field. So I always used to sit with them. I talk to them a lot. I still do. I'd still call them if I don't understand something. And they are very kind enough to explain it to me. I would talk to them. I would start understanding the landscape. And because Hassan, to be honest, like if I'm talking to a portfolio manager, if I'm asking that person, like, we as journalists obviously couldn't talk about specific funds. That means we would be promoting it, which we never did. So we only had to stick to the market sentiments or the trends, the opportunities, the risks, and of course, there would be the geopolitical situations, I would say as well. That played a very big factor that time. So we would always stick to questions like that. And once the phase of me being intimidated that passed on, that cleared that stage, it was very interesting. It was just amazing. I could sit with such people. Like I could sit with the private bankers. I could sit with the distribution guys. I could sit with the relationship managers, actually. Nobody talks about the relationship managers. I feel like they are one of the they are the key people, not one of the key people. I would say they are the key people. They are on the grassroots level. They talk to people like, if we were rich, they would be talking to people like us in the private banking sector. So they really understand the nerves of the market. So once you actually start getting into that circle and you are one of them, they would tell you stuff which used to blow my mind. Like I never thought that things like whatever I heard along the 2 years of me interacting with people within DIFC, ADGM, or back in Saudi with people from the KFDA or any of the local asset managers, was mind-boggling. There was like gold mine of information, which actually, I mean, personally, if it was in my hands, I would have definitely written about it. But then, it's the Middle East, it's the press in the Middle East. So of course you need to be very careful of what you're putting out or whatnot. So yeah, I mean, it was amazing. It was so very interesting and like so knowledge share. Like there was so much of knowledge sharing going on. Obviously, they would ask me questions as well. If there are things that I know about, I would tell them. But most of the time, they would be the one, who would be educating me from where I would be getting all my information. And that also kind of prompted me to opt for CFA, which I did. And currently I am in the process of studying for CFA, and probably, fingers crossed, I would be able to give my exam sometime this year. Yeah, it's been a really, really knowledgeable journey so far.
Fantastic. Paramita, before we get on to Moniify and your thoughts on journalism, there's two questions I had for you. The first is, what skills do you think you need to be a good financial journalist?
The top one, like the number one, would be you need to be a good communicator. You need to talk. That's it. I know sometimes, there used to be instances when I would sit across a private banker, and at the back of my mind, I would be thinking like, oh, okay, these are the things that he's telling me. Sometimes like you wouldn't understand. You can just capture it. You can write it down, but you wouldn't understand. I would say the that also, yes, that also kind of, there was a point where I was getting afraid. Am I really capable to do this? Should I really continue doing it? What if I fail or something like that? There was this one point where like I remembered my first press conference as a cub reporter. I went there with my dad. I was so afraid talking to people, and like I was really, really intimidated. And that was the time my father told me, like, if you don't talk to people, then you can't be a journalist. I'm sorry. So that is one thing that I've always upheld till today. So the first one has to be, you need to be a good communicator and a good orator. You need to talk to people, no matter how low you're feeling, or you're feeling that you don't have that confidence to go up to and talk to someone. You have to leave it behind. Even if you think you are being wrong, please be wrong with confidence. So that is something that will make you a good journalist. Now, a good financial journalist, of course, is you need to read a lot. Read a lot of, I would say, start from the grassroots levels. Like start reading this might sound boring, but start reading the annual balance sheets of companies. Once you start understanding the idea behind those companies, the numbers, the profits, the revenues, the incomes, the liabilities, the assets, the wealth, things would start getting easier step by step. So you need to understand numbers. You need to love numbers to be a financial journalist. It's all a game of numbers. So read as much as you can. Read annual reports. As I said, read annual balance sheets, highlight numbers, understand what's like, how are these numbers calculated? Like how is like probably a yearly profit calculated, or how is a quarterly profit calculated? This is just examples I'm giving. You can read any kind of financial journals. You can read, of course. Also start reading, interviews by these big shot investors, and start tracking the market as well. Like start understanding how a market sentiment works. A market sentiment is very fickle. There has to be, if there's even the slightest of trigger can actually create ripples in the market. So just start understanding, tracking the market. Like, okay, where is the S&P 500 going? Or probably where is the MSCI index? Or how does Nifty work? How does Sensex works? Then how does the normal stock exchanges, like in the Gulf, in the GCC, how do they work? And, what are blue chip companies? The minute details, the minute things at the grassroots levels, the jargons, they are very important. That is something that you have to be very, very, I would say, you need to have it in your mind. So you need to know the meaning behind it. So the only thing is just start reading. That's it. And then once you start reading, then you actually go out and talk to people, and then you can, keep a correlation, like, okay, I read that, so like he or she is also telling me the same thing, so okay, now I understand, and that you will never forget.
No, definitely. What do you think about things like relationships and trust? Do you think that's an important thing as well?
In the financial world, definitely. Like, the word vasta, which we use in the GCC, that is of utmost importance. The stronger the relationship, the amount of information that you get, like, you can't believe. Like, so there was this one intern that I had met during my previous stint, and she happened to ask me this question, like, Paramita, how do you make your sources? And, like, what exactly should she do if she needs to make sources like me? I'm like, look, there's no set formula for making sources. So, and then she actually came up to me and she said, like, oh, but I don't like talking to people. I'm kind of an introvert person. So I'm like, there's no set formula in making contacts or sources. The moment you meet someone, you really need to understand, like, what that person is, how the person is, and would you be able to continue or forge a relationship with that person. If your inner instinct says that, yes, this is a person that would be able to help me probably in the future for any kind of information or anything, any sort of help that I would need, trust me, the next best thing that you should do is, like, keep meeting that person, probably, or, sometimes it's just a simple phone call as well. Like, probably a phone call, like, in 3 or 4 days, just catching up casually, or like just a mere hello would help you strengthen your relationship. And that actually is like a gift in the long term for a journalist. So yes, relationship and trust building is of utmost importance. That should be your first stepping stone towards making sources and contacts. And then how to maintain them, like, how to maintain them, definitely is a very personal preference. There are thousands of ways of maintaining relationships.
Have you ever been put into a situation where you had a source that you were very friendly with or very cordial with, and you had a story, and you wrote the story or you published the story, and it kind of tested your relationship with this person, or it kind of annoyed the person? Have you ever been put in that sort of situation before?
Yes, I have been put into that situation before. There was one incident which happened when I was with Construction Week. But, since I was obviously a junior reporter that time, my editor that time, like, who I still deeply care about, because he was one of my favorite person to work with. So he helped me a lot. He made me understand, like, you can't be panicking. It's fine. Like, you had the story, someone said it, and you have evidence as well. I mean, if I may add, it's when suppose you're doing source stories, like the exclusives, the scoops that we come out with, it's very important for you to have some kind of evidence, because you are not recording it.
Usually double source, right? Double source, like more than one person saying it, right?
Definitely. I would prefer almost like 2 or 3 people saying the same thing. Then also, like, going back, if suppose I got a story about a particular company, I would definitely go back to that company and give them a chance to at least say something or defend them, or probably, like, whether it's like, accept it or deny it. These 3 steps are the most important while doing source stories. And even, there have been instances where, like, you have done all these things and then the story is published, and then as well, like, then also your source comes back to you and they'll be like, why did you publish it? I told you in confidence, this shouldn't have been out on the market. Like, this kind of dents your trust as well. Definitely it does. But over the period of time, you need to give time to such people. Like, let it sink in. You should never go back to such people. Let them come back to you. Because if you go back to that particular person, that means you were in the wrong, which you were not. You did you covered all your bases. So it's always very important for that person to come back to you or probably start talking. If that person doesn't come back to you, he or she was never meant to be your source.
Do you think it's also like a fine line of like where the source feels like you're burning them? So like you don't want to expose your source too much. So say if you write something with anonymity or something like that, like a source said this or a person close said this, people can usually work out who it is if they're in the market. How do you mitigate that, like in terms of protecting your sources while still at the same time conveying the news or conveying the scoop or whatever it was?
I think there comes in the whole concept of double or triple sourcing, because if there are 2 or 3 people saying the same thing, then it makes it virtually impossible to pinpoint like who is saying that. If suppose there's a story about ABC Bank, and then there was this one person who said something like this is going on, or probably they're firing people, or they're hiring more, or they're expanding. But I need to also hear it from someone who doesn't want to work in the bank, or probably, who's someone in that circle who can actually verify that I've also heard about it. And I also came across something like that. So it's very important to at least have 2 to 3 people saying the same thing. And that's where, as I said, the whole concept of going back to that particular company, that particular bank, and give them a chance to clarify, to say or to issue a statement that, if they accept it, well and good, or probably it's a no comment. So that kind of makes it easier for you to go ahead with such sensitive stories.
And how important was channels like WhatsApp? Did you use WhatsApp to communicate with your sources, or did you usually meet them or call them on the phone like a traditional phone call?
WhatsApp is banned. Never ever use WhatsApp to communicate with your sources. I hardly use it. And especially the industry that I'm in, like the banking or the asset management industry, most of the people, they don't use WhatsApp. So sometimes it's being tracked. So I would suggest never use it. Just call them. That's the best. Or go and meet them. That's the best thing. It obviously builds trust as well. When you are talking to someone like face to face, their reactions, is the expressions that comes in handy with the story as well. You would then definitely, start understanding where lies the difference, what's fake, what's true. So just call them, go and meet them. Never use WhatsApp.
And have you ever I'm sure you got into a situation where, for example, you were dealing with a difficult press person from a company or from a bank. What was that like, dealing with like a difficult press people?
Oh my God, that's like the bane of a journalist's life. Like, should I be really open about it? And
Yeah, completely. Be as frank as you want.
Probably the PR people will just kill me after this. But yeah, the corporate communications people, you really need to build a good relationship with them. More than the PR, it's the corp comms guys who are your next best friends. So, because sometimes it's the Copcom guys who will tell you whether a particular piece of information is right or wrong. So you need to really put yourself out there in the list of the Copcoms, of course, of whichever sector you are writing about. So always do that. They are difficult. And probably it's kind of like the nature of their job. I'm really not dissing them. I do have very, very good friends in corporate communications, and I know how extremely difficult it is for them to deal with their clients, and to satisfy everyone's needs and all of that. So it's very difficult. But be on all the Copcoms people's list. PR. Oh, okay. So PR people are really difficult. And, this is something that I have seen in the GCC that, I've come across, I've worked across all the 6 countries. So the people really don't do their homework. I'm very sad to say this, but they really don't do their homework. As a financial journalist, I have received press releases from dental companies, from hospitality companies, from, I don't know, whatever, except the sector that I'm writing about. So it's my earnest request to all the PR people that please do your homework. Please understand what a particular journalist does, and please send across press releases accordingly. Please understand that I would definitely not be writing about a dentist. No matter how many times you call me and you ask me that, Parvita, have you received that press release? Would you be writing about it? Of course not. I wouldn't be. And no matter how many times I have to tell you that please don't call me, and please don't send me across press releases which are not relevant to my sector. Like it's really annoying sometimes, because sometimes when you are trying to focus and you're trying to write a story like probably 1,000 or 1,200 word feature, and then suddenly someone calls you and they ask you like, oh, did you receive that press release about certain rhinoceros getting kidnapped in certain jungles of whichever part of the world? No, that is not something I would be doing, and please don't call me. So I'm really not hating upon the PR people. They are really lovely. They have their own jobs, I'm pretty sure. Like I've come across some really, really good PR people. I've worked with some of them and they are super efficient, super nice. But, like that would be, I would say 40%, rest 60%. You really need to work upon.
I just want to shift gears a little bit, looking at Moniify. We've been talking for a bit about your career, and you've been in the traditional mainstream media, let's say, or the vanilla media, like where it's print or online, a very traditional, straightforward media. But then like you said, in 2024, I think you joined Moniify. For our viewers and listeners who don't know Moniify, what is Moniify?
So Moniify is funded by the family office of Egyptian billionaire Naguib Sawiris. I'm guessing most of the people who are based in the GCC would be acquainted with the Sawiris family. They had previous stakes in Euronews, and of course, Naguib had stakes in the chemical company of Fertiglobe, and then they moved their family office from London to Abu Dhabi sometime in the end of 2023. So Moniify started out as being like a digital savvy, digital first newsroom which will cater to Gen Zs, trying to make the idea of investing much more simpler, easier, and probably like how to make more money. So that was the motto. And they have a website, and they wanted to create a significant presence on all possible social media platforms as well, across regions like the GCC, India, Southeast Asia, and the verticals were tech and AI, then wealth, markets and macro. So yeah, these were the news verticals that Moniify was, or probably is, still focusing on.
They had a lavish launch event, right? The Museum of the Future in Dubai.
Yes, it was very lavish. Quite a few tech journalists were brought in from Southeast Asia, India. They also partnered with a lot of influencers from these regions to make reels for Instagram, for TikTok, LinkedIn. Then they had plans of making YouTube videos as well, podcasts like this. And the plans were very big, very big. I mean, come on, we were like a newsroom of almost 110 people at one time. So it was huge. There were journalists in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in India. There were production people from organizations like Vice, Wall Street Journal, journalists from Bloomberg, Reuters, NBC, and you mentioned the names, and they were there, like from all the reputed media companies. So as I said, it was a pretty strong newsroom of almost 110 people.
And then, so you joined them, and then what happened?
I don't know where to begin, actually. When I joined them, the idea was there. Everything was going very smoothly. Like we were working on populating the website, like trying to get news out, and we were trying to actually figure out the language that would talk to the Gen Zs, that the Gen Zs would appreciate and understand. And we were trying to make the idea of investing really simpler, cut down on jargons. Everyone was so good at the job. Like we really put in a lot of hard work coming up with the website. Then we were also trying to, people like us, as you said, we have always been on the vanilla side of journalism. When we started switching to multimedia, we also started recording quite a few short videos for the social media. Then they were like, we were testing out the waters up until November. Everything was going very smooth. The website was launched, and we also started getting a bit of traction, especially on social media, I would say. The videos were getting good responses, like the short videos. All the journalists were encouraged to go on board and, just get on with shooting videos and understanding how the production side works. So it was pretty fun. I mean, we all were excited about it, like really excited about it, because we haven't done something new like this. And, it was funky. It was trendy. You were trying to create something new. You also were trying to compete with established names in the market, because I think after a long time, this was like a media house that was being introduced or that was being launched in the UAE. So we really created a buzz in it had people talking. At first, we were Busy Next, and that was the parent company. And then, of course, the website was named Moniify. So the buzz was definitely created. I think, how... I don't know, probably then it turned out to be a classic case of a startup. As we have seen with so many other startups, that you expand too quickly. And then, so we, like, Moniify did expand very quickly. So as I said, at one point, like 110 people. Then came, of course, then came the whole phase of whether you are really required or not. And because there were changes in strategy, we were still testing the waters. There was a lot of R&D going on. And then slowly and steadily, things were becoming more clearer. And their whole strategy was pivoting. It was changing. And then came the whole phase of probably so many people were not needed. Probably this vertical didn't need like 4 people. Only 1 or 2 could have done that. Of course, the whole case of the retrenchment that happened. So it was unfortunate, but then that's how startups or mid-sized companies work. So yeah, it was.
I mean, from your perspective, Paramita, what was the first red flag that you felt that, hang on a second, something's not right here?
I would say the lack of communication. There was a severe lack of communication from the top level and to the grassroots level. Nothing was flowing as it should have been in a startup. There were times where you would actually feel like you are not a part of a family, or probably like you were thinking like what's happening exactly. So the first red flag for me was the lack of communication. I'm guessing most of my other colleagues would still say the same as well.
And then so you were writing for them, and then what happened? What happened after?
Like the website, we were all writing for the website. Like the I would say the journalists who were hired, we were all writing, we were all doing our work, doing our stories and doing our bit, I would say. And then, as I said, once their strategy pivoted, they wanted to pivot more towards social media and reels and videos, which I'm guessing is absolutely fine. I mean, if that's what, that's what the Gen Zs are talking about, or probably that is something, the way information is being consumed right now by that age group, I'm all up for it. So that's when the strategy changed, everything else changed as well. So me, along with so many other people, I don't have a number right now on my head. We were all let go of. So it was a very it was a sad, it was a very unfortunate, not sad, I would say, it was a very unfortunate incident that took place. I guess, that's how startups probably work. It will always remain like that, like a very hire and fire policies for startups. So, and that's why I'm still averse to working for a startup. This was actually my first stint with one. So, and I vowed not to go back to a startup again.
Do you think, when I first heard about Moniify, I think I was at the 1 billion followers summit in Dubai in January.
Yes.
And when I first heard about it and I met some of the people from the company, I was thinking to myself, I didn't really understand what they were about. Were they a news platform like Bloomberg or CNBC, or are they like a personal finance influencing platform? It wasn't really clear, the strategy to me. And like I think when I mentioned to you offline about the Smashy podcast, when they asked were talking about it, and they didn't really understand the business strategy behind Moniify. I mean, do you have any thoughts about what happened and why it went wrong?
You are right, actually. There was no clear strategy at, like, when I was there, when I was working with them. So that also was a red flag. They at one point were actually would produce such stories which which would definitely compete with the stories with the likes of Bloomberg or Reuters or CNBC, like really good stories for the website. But then at one point there were times like it only used to be reels on TikTok or on Instagram or on Twitter. So it was very confusing for the people who were actually working. For journalists like us, there were a lot of journalists actually in the newsroom that time. And as I said, because of the lack of communication, the whole idea of what Moniify exactly is, or probably the strategy behind the newsroom, was opaque. So we never had a clear vision of what we exactly are. So that's when I guess, that's when I guess people like me started really feeling very confused. Like, what am I doing? What's next? You have that thing going on in your mind, but like, okay, what's next? What am I supposed to do? So yeah, there was a clear lack of strategy. Definitely.
I mean, from your perspective, why did you want to join such a platform when you already had a good career so far with the traditional media platforms?
Oh, trust me, I get asked that question a lot. I would say, it was the whole idea when I was interviewing with BusyNext that time. It was very fascinating for me. Like, first of all, there was this new media house that's coming up. So it's trendy, it's funky, the whole, like the way that stories would be written would be different. And so I wanted to be a part of building something. Like a core team. I wanted to build something, and something which I could call it my own, like, that I have made this, or probably like I have contributed towards a success. So that idea was really fascinating to me. And then I also wanted to try my hands at multimedia, like, how these YouTube videos are shot, how the reels are made, how would you do piece to camera, selfie videos. So that's because you also know that information is right now being consumed in various ways. Like, people would nowadays not even pick up a magazine and read a 1200 or 1500 word feature. If information is being consumed through Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn or TikTok or Snapchat, so you need to upgrade yourself. Definitely, you need to do that. You need to move ahead with the times. So that idea really called me to sign up for this role. That was it. But probably at the end, it just didn't work out.
I think it was an experiment, and it just, like, I don't think they really thought about their strategy too much. But it's unfortunate that what happened to you and other people as well. I know there was an article, I think, on I can't remember which news outlet it was, but I shared the article with you a few days ago. And there was a story, I think, a couple of months ago about a lady, I think, worked at Moniify, and she tweeted at Naguib Suarez about what happened. And do you think, like, there's any food for thought here going forward when launching such a startup again?
The only food for thought, I think, for such startups would be you have to give it time. And the first thing is time. The second thing, of course, is like having a very clear vision, a clear strategy. Like, okay, if I'm being a social media agency, I would only be a social media agency. I would not pivot towards anything else. Or if I'm a news outlet, like a digital news outlet, of course, it hardly exists anymore. So if I'm being a digital, like an online news website, then I'll make sure that I only focus on the news website. That's it. I wouldn't be focusing on anything else. And the third thing I would say, like, I know that being a startup, you would want to expand as quickly as possible. You would want to create a buzz around yourself. You would want to have good people on board. But then expanding too quickly is also not advisable. You have to go through that you have to go through that whole process of starting little and then expanding and then then converting yourself into a full-blown company.
As we bring the podcast to a close shortly, one of the things I wanted to talk to you also today was about the state of media and the state of journalism. We've been talking for a while about what happened with Moniify and your career. I wrote a LinkedIn post about 2 months ago after I attended the 1 Billion Followers Summit, talking about the state of journalism. And I think this has been brewing for the last couple of years, particularly since the pandemic, that the state of journalism, well, probably even before the pandemic in 2016, with the election of Donald Trump and Brexit and all these other political events. How would you characterize right now in 2025, April 2025, the state of journalism, not just financial journalism in the Gulf, but just generally? Are you positive right now or not so positive?
I would say I am positive about journalism, definitely. I know that there are instances where information is being out on social media, which is not palatable. There are fake news. And then obviously there is this whole issue of AI generating stuff like images or news or something like that, which actually might not be true. But then if you look at the bright side, then you will find content creators, you would find journalists, even you would find citizen journalists who actually come up with really good stories. Some of the content creators who I follow on Instagram, I would say mostly on Instagram and then of course on LinkedIn, like they do such amazing stuff. Like some of the podcasts they put out, or maybe some of the small videos or reels that they put out are so informative. Probably like things that I would not know about, like things which actually we would probably just ignore on a daily basis. But then there are always stories everywhere. So those kind of content creators are really doing a good job. And then there are journalists, of course, like obviously the experienced one, and then people with mid experience like myself. So we are trying really hard to put out information. I wouldn't say content, information, which would actually, which would provide you clarity about the sectors that we are writing about. We are striving very hard for that. And then, of course, there are people like yourself who are doing these amazing podcasts and then videos where you actually get to understand the raw nature of people. It's just probably a friendly chat or not being overtly formal. So there are different ways of consuming information. We can't be saying that, like print is dead, now what, journalism is dead. No, it's not like that. Like, obviously, during my father's generation, it was newspapers. Like, when I was growing up, it was like newspapers were slowly transitioning to online websites. And now it's social media. So it's fine. We just have to be a bit more careful about what we are consuming, how we are consuming, and what's real, what's fake. We just need to use a bit of our brains. We just need to be a bit vigilant about what's being sold to us, what's being put out in front of us. And if you, like obviously with our parents who are not that familiar with social media, if you need to educate them, if you need to make them understand, please do. And yeah, I'm pretty positive about journalism. Like there's so much happening, and we could actually make a change to the society. Like we are the fourth pillar of democracy.
You made a very interesting point. You said the content creators and journalists that you follow. So are you saying that you don't follow like mainstream publications anymore, like the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times? You'd rather follow the journalists themselves?
I would actually, personally, I do follow the journalists themselves. Like some of them have their own newsletters, which are so good to read. I wouldn't mention names, but my Gmail gets flooded with such newspapers because I've subscribed to most of them. And then there are these amazing content creators who actually put out such good grassroots level stories, whether it's visually or on videos. Like they're lovely to read and to watch. I'm not dissing the traditional media outlets. Of course, I like to verify to sometimes, you would turn towards Bloomberg or towards Reuters, towards CNBC or Wall Street Journal to like, okay, what's happening or something like that. But then when you are following that particular journalist or that said journalist, you actually get to understand behind the scenes stuff, like the op-eds that they write, the commentaries that they write, or maybe, sometimes their own experiences that they would share on their X profiles. So that is something that I really enjoy. And I really engage a lot with such things. What about you?
What I'm trying to get at is like, if you, the actual business of journalism, I think it's changed a lot. And you're right, the way we consume media is, the way we consume news and information is very different to say what it was 5 years ago. And at the 1 billion followers summit, Tucker Carlson was there. And Tucker Carlson, who, if you like him or not, he is very influential in the United States when he was on Fox News and some of the news channels. And now he's got his own platform and they get millions and millions of views. Similarly, Piers Morgan, he's not everybody's cup of tea, but in terms like 4 million subscribers, millions and millions of views. Similarly, Mehdi Hassan, a lot of people might not like him, but again, he's got his own news outlet. So it seems like, to me, news is a lot more democratic now than it was, say, even 5 years ago. People can choose who they want to follow rather than following, the newspaper, where you have to buy the newspaper and then you read all the articles. I just think that the business of news is very different to what it was even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And yeah, you're right. We can choose what we want to consume, and on demand as well. Paramita, forgive me, but I remember when I was starting out in journalism, and when I was starting out writing these articles, I had to write the certain number of words, because otherwise, when it would go to the printers, it would mess up the article,
Exactly.
the newspaper, right? So, and now you're having to write articles or on Substack, or making podcasts, whether they're video or audio, making Instagram Reels, Instagram Shorts, and all these kind of things. It's a completely different kettle of fish and a different game now, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, and you would also want to consume information not only when you are at home or something. What if you're traveling and you actually want to understand, okay, what's going on, and you just pick up your phone and you see, probably on X or on Instagram, that something happened, and it's so real time right now. Previously, newspapers, remember, yesterday's news used to be the lead for today's newspaper. So I think those days are gone. Now everything is so real time. And I think that is something that we definitely should cash on. But as I said, you have to understand what to consume, how to consume, whether it's real, how it affects your life, basically. You shouldn't be what is affecting your thinking? Are you thinking rationally? Are you consuming information rationally and understanding behind the scenes about that information? So once, all of those things actually give you a very clear picture of what's happening in the market and how people are behaving, how the market sentiment is. So I think now it's a very dynamic and a very interesting time. And as I said, please, I would urge all the Gen Zs and all the millennials to talk to your parents and to also make them understand how social media works, what's good, what's bad. And if they want to consume information, not only on TV, but then there's, of course, listen to podcasts, watch YouTube videos, documentaries. So it's a very completely different ballgame nowadays.
Paramita, tell us any projects you may be working on, any upcoming projects you may be working on.
So I'm currently freelancing with two publications. I'm writing about Middle East, and I'm also writing about Asia as well. They have a lot of correlation in the private wealth space. So I am very keen on expanding my exposure to the Asian market as well. As I said, I'm also preparing for my CFA. So I'm currently studying that, and man, it's so difficult.
Yeah, level 1 is hardest, I've heard.
It is. So I'm going to take time. And I'm kind of also expanding my contact base, my source base. Nowadays I'm meeting a lot of people. I'm trying to strengthen my relationships, which I know that is going to help me in my future. So these are the things that I'm working on.
Amazing. And how can people get hold of you or reach you?
So I am, my email's always open, which is paramitaday1287@gmail.com. I'm also on Instagram under my name, Paramita Day, my name, and X also. But I am very active on LinkedIn and Instagram. So please hit me up if you want to meet up for a coffee when I'm in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, or probably anywhere in the GCC, please let me know. I'll be very happy to catch up and talk as much as you want.
Pramit, today this has been a really fantastic conversation, and I wish you all the best in obviously in your CFA studies and also in your writing career. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do next.
Absolutely, Hassan. I loved talking to you, and I wish you all the best for your upcoming video podcasts as well. And it has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you made it this far, you must have enjoyed that episode. If you did enjoy that episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us bring you more great insights. Follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram for the latest updates. Got feedback or guest suggestion? Email me at hassan@majlisandmarkets.com.